Hey, what's up, everybody? BDO44 coming at you with another video. All right, so I was listening to Jalen Rhodes, and he was giving us kind of, I'm not going to say insight, but he was giving us the best he could give us in regards to providing his understanding of the situation, given the fact that he knows some of the players involved on both sides. And essentially what he was saying was KD made certain demands of the Brooklyn Nets, and Josiah gave him those demands, gave into those demands. KD signed his 4-year deal. Josiah felt like KD had honored him doing those deals, doing all those demands for him. By signing that contract, we're even, bro. We're even. I don't have to do nothing else for you in that vein. Everything else we do is for the benefit of the Brooklyn Nets. Because, that's just the way to do it. He did business in this way, and I get it. That makes sense. Except for the fact that players still move after contracts are signed. If the NBA worked that way, then Anthony Davis would have finished his commitment, his full contract with the Pelicans. And therefore we would have seen other situations. I'm trying to figure others. Obviously, James Harden as well. Player that you acquired has done the same thing in order to force his way to your organization. So that's not how the NBA works. Why? See Blake Griffin. That's why. Because he signed a huge deal for multiple years with a certain franchise, and that certain franchise traded him in the first year of that deal to a situation that was not favorable at all. He had no say-so, and he did not demand out. He did not make a fuss. He just sat there. In my mind, he is why guys are reacting in such a way like KD's doing. Like, there's no way you're about to have us sign these contracts, be committed to your franchise, and this be possible. That you could send me to the bowels of the league right after signing it. I'm just, no. Now, you, after signing me, still have to do certain things, or I'm going to use my leverage as a player to get to a situation that is going to continue to see the fruit in giving me into those demands. I don't want, just because I've signed with you at my value, for our relationship to change just because now you have me on tab. Because see, in the presence of the environment being as it is, what that actually looks like is you getting over as an owner. That's what that actually looks like. Now, if in the presence of everybody being able to freely make moves and it being an easy environment, with the cap to just make teams great and all of that, it changes things. If for some reason we're talking about a different level of player, if you were a role player, it changes things. All these different things change everything because he is who he is. In the presence of all of this, Josiah has to manage the situation very carefully. And again, a lot of people are saying, well, you just don't trade him. You just bring him back. And my thinking is, if he sits out, you don't have him anyway. That's the problem. You're risking it. You're really, really risking it at this point, and you're making the situation worse. So now the likelihood of him coming back becomes less and less as the time continues to increase. He starts settling into basically retirement. You understand what I'm saying? You don't want that if you really want him at a high level. You have him represented at how much money of your cap? That can't sit on the sidelines just because you can't see the fruit in making certain strategic decisions that otherwise put aside your ego. Because even though in the presence of this market, other owners may not realize that they need to do that, they will have to eventually do so as well. They all gonna have to fall in line. Why? Because at the very end of the day, Very end of the day, these are elite athletes. And while you can replenish them, if the system from which you replenish them doesn't pay them properly and keep them in situations where they feel good, you're going to have this problem every single generation, no matter what. It's not about these guys go and then these problems go away. No, they don't. Because these guys are reacting to the system that is otherwise not set up for them to feel as if they're getting all of it that they're supposed to be getting out of it. And that's the point. If it ain't these guys, it's going to be the next guys. If it ain't the next guys, it's going to be the ones after that too. And then so on and so forth, as long as you continue to apply these same methods. So yeah, you can have him sit out, wait out, and all of that. And what you're going to get is a reaction from the players that is not going to be favorable for the owners. In the following collective bargaining agreement, like, this is just something that's going to drag out for years and years and years and years and years. Because of what? Because of what exactly? Because people don't realize what it is they're involved in, which is a market that's ever changing, like literally changing by the second. Like, that's the biggest problem. To me, it seems like this is a sport that has a science attached to it that everybody has to understand, but not everybody does. That's the problem. This cap system is complex as hell. And it's hard to maneuver in it. And guys get frustrated when you don't maneuver properly. And that is what is happening here. On the greater scheme, the greater, bigger, huger picture is simple as that. It's as simple as that, man. And so either the NBA find a way to simplify their system so that it's easier to structure teams without all this, the presence of this nonsense, or you're going to continue to have disgruntled players. That's what it's going to trickle down to. And that's basically what I've been screaming for 2 years. Since I started this channel, I've been basically saying it. These guys aren't just mad because they're spoiled players, this, that, and the third. They got a short amount of time to get it right. That's what I was thinking about. I was listening to Jalen Rose in the same segment, I believe. He was talking about who he blames for the situation. He says, the decision to bring in James Harden ultimately was the backbreaker, because him reacting to Kyrie's situation ultimately is what broke the team up. They had to make the trade. It ultimately would have been best in his mind if they just would have stuck with Kyrie and KD and built around that in the first place. Never would have had any of these problems trickle down. I can see how that aligns, and it does make sense, but I don't think I blame James Harden. I just think that's a byproduct of the situation in and of itself. In other words, yes, bringing on a disgruntled James Harden, you knew he could possibly do this, and him doing this did ultimately put you in this situation. But I don't think it's as simple as that. I think James Harden forced his way to Brooklyn, and then from there would have otherwise been happy if this circumstance didn't take place. So blaming him doesn't make as much sense to me in that way. But as I said, Jalen worded in such a way, to me it seemed, where he was saying that the decision to ultimately bring him in the first place is the problem, and I do agree with that. I guess it's one of those situations where it's like, if you're weighing a person's tendencies, then you had better expect certain things. Once you bring James Harden in, you had damn well expect if something goes wrong with Kyrie or KD or anything, coach, whatever, he's going to force his way out. And see, this brings us back to the full circle of what we're talking about. KD has now put himself in a position where people are now looking at him that way, having already learned that lesson from James Harden. So it's like they're hesitant, extremely hesitant to take his contract on after this trade demand, and then now further, making these type of demands on top of it, which I do think, if were made, as I said, I still don't think he'd be happy. I don't think he actually wants them to do this stuff. I think he wants them to trade him. You understand what I'm saying? Like, for those who are wondering, I don't, and I'm gonna say this very carefully, I don't think Kevin Durant is trying to get Steve Nash and Sean Marks fired. No. He's trying to leverage their unwillingness to fire them against his willingness to get traded, to expedite the process of him being traded. That is what I think he's trying to do. And I just think it's ill-advised. It's just the wrong way to move. Because that's not... The reason why you haven't been traded isn't necessarily the price tag that they've put on you. It's the price tag they put on you on top of the price tag that was placed on the entire market, inflated to hell with that Gobert trade. It's like nobody can move, as we've talked about a million times. It's like KD doesn't understand that. That's what it seems to me. Like that part of the business, he ain't really getting that part. Somebody told him, hey, yo, nobody can move, bro. Like that is what seems to me would prompt him to try to do something like this, try to force people's hand. Like, you will trade me. No, we won't, for a price that doesn't make any sense for us. Now, if he's giving them the royal finger, then obviously he wants to force them into trading him for a price that isn't any good for him, you know, to further screw them over or whatever. But you got to understand, it's like, you know, what do they say? You cut your nose off to spite your face or something like that. You're hurting yourself, man. You're punching them, but you're breaking your hand. That's what that is. You're pulling a Kareem. You don't want to do that. You're punching them, but you're the one out for the season. Nah, you won't do that. You got to pull back on that punch, KD. That doesn't make any sense, bro. Especially at this age. It's not how you want to go out. It's not. I just see mistakes being made. That's all I see. I see guys making mistakes. I see, and people reacting to those mistakes accordingly. You know, this is why it's so important that players and everybody just gets an understanding of this game, the science behind the game, rather, and just understand what's going on, the fullness of it, so that you don't maneuver in such a way that harms you, trying to do things that help others. And this is a lesson to all players. If you're going to try to use your leverage to help get someone paid, you must understand what that does to your value, especially if that player you're trying to help is disgruntled. Because now it looks like you're aligning with somebody who should not be aligned with, in the eyes of a lot of people who see that. You know what I mean? Now, me, personally, y'all know I don't see it that way. That ain't the point. I'm the minority, and I don't sway anything. You need to be able to convince people who don't think like me. And Kyrie is somebody who they look at as the bad guy. So if you're standing next to the bad guy and you are going to try to use your leverage to get him paid, you got to question how bad they want to stick it to that guy. You understand what I'm saying? For what his offense is, quote unquote, which is not taking the vax, and you know how deep that runs, it's bigger than basketball for them. You know, like they look at his influence as something that kept people from taking it, and you don't know how deep that runs. So at this point, it's like, nah, they're not gonna choose basketball. In the event they wanted to choose basketball, they probably would be like, yeah, let's give Kyrie his money, and if it doesn't work out, we still keep KD, so it's all good. I'm looking at it that way. Why? Because it's deeper than that. They don't give a damn. They're like, yo, Brooklyn Nets, nada. He should have taken that thing, and that's how they're moving. That's how they move. So if you understand the energy behind it, you know if you stand next to that, you're going to blow up next to it. Because the hate that they got for that dude and the energy around him is deeper than the love they have for keeping the team strong and do all that. Like literally all that. Seems to me. It's all that makes sense. So yeah, I know they're selling a certain thing to the American public. They really are. Kyrie's disgruntled bad guy. KD's lined up next to him, bad guy. Okay, but not really. What's really going on is something much more sinister than that, it seems to me, in my speculations. But nevertheless, we just sit back and we continue to focus on the aspects of it that have to do with basketball, even though it does bleed into the game of basketball, which is why I brought the point that I brought to you guys now twice, I think over the last week, which is the NBA seems to believe itself to be bigger than the game of basketball, or, to rephrase the thought, has gotten itself intertwined in situations with corporations who value things above basketball far too much for the benefit of the NBA and doing business with them. And that's what I'm seeing. It's like, okay, you get investors that have no damn care for the spirit of basketball. You understand what I'm saying? They slap the NBA on whatever it is they're doing and proceed to do whatever it is their agenda is. And the NBA is just a byproduct of that. It's just kind of piggyback on it. You know what I mean? It's sort of like, I hate to use this analogy, but I'm going to use it anyway. it's like slapping something really, really. I got an idea. It's like putting branding on something that you want to bring attention to that otherwise shouldn't have attention to it. Like putting a McDonald's pendant on a presidential candidate or something like that. That's not right, right? But that's kind of how I see some of the stuff that's going on around the NBA. So the NBA needs to shake that off. They need to get rid of, identify those investors and stop doing business with them. Because this shot situation, it shouldn't run that deep. This should not run that deep. Especially when I know there are players in this league that didn't take it. They didn't take it, bro. We didn't know about it. They didn't play in Toronto. They didn't play in certain games. They didn't play in Brooklyn. Or actually, they could play in Brooklyn because the mandate said that they could. Which further made it make no sense. Further made it why all of this is happening. Because that shined light shouldn't have been on it in the first place. And that is what I was telling you guys earlier today, of course, if you've been following. It's all of this just brings it back to everybody's reacting to things as it seems like they should. But the presence of the market and the presence of how things work make it so that when you do that, you disrupt things that you don't want to disrupt. It's a Jenga. It's like, oh, you moved the wrong thing. Everything falls apart. So, yeah, man, that's what I see, man. For the spirit of basketball, the NBA needs to get its act together. And the players have to understand that, just like I said about everything right now, it's expendable. You are expendable. Why? Because the players who they value the most are guys that are not here yet. That's what a guy like KD needs to get really, really understood right now. Overstand this point, homie. They value Victor Wembanyama much more than they value Kevin Durant today. And you need to know that so you have an understanding of what type of leverage you got and you don't got. Now, does Victor have that leverage? Absolutely not. Why? Because the presence of being able to screw him over with a rookie contract. But if for not the presence of that, he could say, look, I'm going to this team. I want to go play for the Knicks and only the Knicks, and I'm on $200 million. And I bet you he'd get it too. If it wasn't for the presence of all of that, he would be one of the number one players with leverage, and he ain't even been drafted yet. Because he sways the tide more than anyone else right now. Because everybody's trying to move heaven and earth to get him. That is why you can't see KD getting moved. That is why Donovan Mitchell hasn't been moved. That's why all this stuff ain't happened. Because people are trying to get Victor. And so KD needs to understand that that's the guy. And until he proves he's not the guy, they can inflate his value to the high heavens. And they are. They're bidding for him right now. You got a bidding war between the San Antonio Spurs, the Indiana Pacers, and the Utah Jazz for a hypothetical player that may not even land in their lap if the lottery doesn't fall in place the proper way. That's how much leverage the kid has. The moves that they're making to try to get him may not actually land him, and they know that. It's like trying to do a puzzle to land a chance to get a lottery ticket. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Like, it's that real. It's like a shoe lottery. Like, you get the lottery, maybe we get the shoe. No, this is not the type of market that you can just, I want to move, and you need to fire him, and you're going to do it, and you're going to pay my homeboy and all. You don't. No. Nobody in the league has that leverage. Why? Because everybody in the league is reacting to the positioning that those three teams and a few others probably are trying to make themselves get this Victor Wembanyama guy. He's why Utah has inflated Rudy Gobert's value to the heavens. That's why. Danny Ainge has done this to all of us because he wants Vic. Why? Because he knows San Antonio wants Vic. Because he knows Indy wants Vic. That's what's happening here. That's why the market is frozen. That's why. So, if you understand that and overstand that and superstand that and all of that, then you move accordingly from here on out. This is Victor's world right now. But here's the thing. That changes very fast. Like immediately. And all of this is possible because nobody's playing any basketball right now. Now, Victor's value and all that, that's going to remain for the rest of the season. Don't get it twisted. That part doesn't change because things are happening because people are trying to get him. And unless he goes down, knock on wood, God bless him, There's with an injury, there's no reason for that to change, in my opinion. But everything else is dependent on who is able to prove what they're doing in real time, and accumulation of other things as well, data. But at the end of the day, I do think Kevin Durant, his situation is he overplayed his hand tremendously with this move. Overplayed it to no end. Because now they're going to probably test him and bring that team back just to spite him, just like Philly did with Ben. And because it worked for Philly, they got evidence, data to show that it worked. Different situation. Probably more likely it works with KD because of the structure of the contract and the style of play of the player and the age of the player. So you probably feel even better about making KD sit out than you would have been sentenced if you're Philly, which is bad. Which is bad if you're KD. But as I always said, if he's willing to walk away, he's in good shape. As long as he's willing to retire, he's fine. And that also means giving back money for this contract. Yes, indeed, sir. Yes, indeed. However much left on there, you're going to have to get that back. Don't think they're going to let you sit on contract and sit out. No, they're going to fight that. The contract's too big, in my opinion. That ain't going to be no luau dang stretching, nothing like that. I don't know anything about how that actually works, but I can tell you if it's a headache for the Brooklyn Nets, they're going to fight it. They're going to give you a headache before they take on that headache. That's what I think. So, yeah, Joe Tsai, he seems like a tough dude, man. You know, he's from a different place. They do things differently, and he's very successful there. So he has a certain face that he has to keep up, standing over here in America doing American business. Got to remember that, man. That's what I've been trying to teach and speak on lately as well, is remembering the position people play and why they must do certain things, even if ethically they may not want to, or if they like logically can see the position from all angles, they still got to stand firm in their position because they have other people watching them who are waiting for them to show some weakness. So, yeah, it's bigger than basketball. It's always bigger than basketball, and that's the problem. It needs to get back to being basketball so we can actually enjoy the sport. But I don't know that it's going to work that way because everything's corporate, and again, that's bigger than basketball. So it is what it is, man. Welcome to the world. I got everything out that I think I want to say in regards to the situation. I think Joe Tsai is going to make the best decision for his team, which means he's probably not going to want to bring the price down, but the price is going to come down anyway, just like I said earlier. He doesn't determine the price tag no more. He really doesn't. The market does. So they're going to find that out. They're going to find that out right now, man. KD ain't going nowhere. I hate to tell you guys this, but there ain't going to be no trade made unless Boston just up and gives them Jaylen Brown, like I said earlier. Everything I'm saying is just repeat. So it is what it is, man. My name is BDF44. I thank you all for watching.